Christ alone my hope is found. He is my light, my strength, my song, this cornerstone, this solid ground, firm through the fiercest drought and storm. What heights of love, what depths of peace, when fears are stilled, when striving cease. My comforter, my all in all, here in the love of Christ I stand. In Christ alone, who took on flesh, fullness of God in helpless babe, this gift of love and righteousness.
Welcome to the Meet at the Creek podcast, and I'm your host, Pastor James Jeffrey. If you have questions or comments, send them to mudcreekpastor@gmail.com. That's mudcreekpastor@gmail.com. Meet at the Creek, sermons, discussions, and real talk. Let's get into it. Now, everybody's got a WWE wrestling intro. Welcome into Meet at the Creek, everybody. We're getting started a little early tonight. I am Pastor James Jeffrey. Great to have everybody tuned in. We already got comments coming in. The first one says, Jamie, turn your ringer off.
I already have.
Oh, goodness gracious. We should have known it would be the favorite. Unfavorite. The number one. All right. So tonight is a happy 4th of July edition. I guess we could call it that. So happy 4th of July, everybody. Thank you for tuning in and joining us. I know some of y'all are probably getting ready to do fireworks and things like that. So you go right ahead. But we're up here at the church, and we're inside the coffee shop getting ready to have a little fun and do a little back and forth tonight. I got to tell you guys, I'm a little bit excited because a couple of weeks ago, you two said that it would be fun to do a show where a couple of the Mud Creek guys got to ask the pastor questions, put him on the hot seat like he puts others on the hot seat. So with me tonight, as most of you already know, Brother Jamie Terrell, Brother Chris Clements. I've had Brother Chris on the audio side of the podcast that we post on Apple Podcasts and Podbean. But Jamie's, I bought him some stuff, but he's just dropped the ball. He decided he don't know how to do technology all of a sudden. If it don't involve calling somebody or a 5-word text message, it's just above his pay grade. So he likes to keep things simple, and I guess we're just still living that Army motto: KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Keep it so simple that it's stupid. And that's exactly who, really and truly, I guess we all could benefit from living life a little bit more in that direction. But it's good to have you guys on. It feels weird having 3 people instead of just 2. I'll just be honest with you. One of the shows that we had a few weeks when I was still doing it from the house, I had Craig with me, and then I had 2 guys on the phone at the same time.
Couple lawmen.
Yeah, one, the sheriff of Blount County, Brother Mark Moon, and the pastor of and I can't. I'm forgetting his name. I know it's Nathaniel Bates. I'm forgetting the name of the church that he pastors out there on the mountain. Doggone it. Well, I'll think of it in a little bit. Probably after we go off the air, I'll think of it. Nathaniel, I'm sorry. I know it. I've looked at the sign 50 times as I've drove by it out there. But anyhow, just drawing a blank right now. Getting old, buddy. Getting old. If you see this later on, you probably ain't even watching this right now. You're probably on the river fishing somewhere, if I had to guess. But that was a lot of fun, guys. I'll be honest with you. Those phone interviews were a lot of fun with guys that couldn't be with us in person. And over the next couple of months, I'm going to have a lot of guests here with us in person. And I'm looking real forward to that. That's going to be a ton of fun. I hope everybody gets a lot out of those things. All right, I got a little tiny messenger of Satan over here already. I guess a little fruit fly or something.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Shelby.
Right.
Hey. Natalie Hawkins said, "What's up, boy?" I don't know who she's talking to, but it ain't me. Oh, she probably is. She knows I go. Shelby said, "Why Chris looks so scared? What'd y'all do to him?" We didn't do anything. Hello, Brother Patrick Kenniger. Good to see you. On with us tonight. You guys do me a favor right fast. I know there ain't many people watching. I don't think. I can't. It says 21. We got 21 watching, which is, I'm surprised by it being 4th of July. That many folks have tuned in. If you're watching, do me a favor. Like the broadcast. Share it. If you don't care. Now, if you have to run, we understand. We had to see you go, but we love to watch you walk away. Ain't that how it goes? As long as you share it, we'll be excited for your exit. So, amen. Share it where somebody else that ain't busy can jump on. You must be texting Chris because she's telling you to get out of her face. Hello, Brother Brandon Brown. What else is there to do? You're right, brother. Come on up and get in on the action. Hey, man. Come on, come all. That's what I say. I got enough microphones and headphones in there. We could do. We could actually do it. Of course, now we wouldn't be able to do all of the headphones, but I could split these microphones. We could have a lot of fun. But anyhow, maybe some of these days, can't never tell what we'll do around this place. So what we're going to do, guys, I'm going to let you to introduce yourself, and y'all always give me, the business on Thursday nights about how I say. I'm going to let you talk, and then I'll cut them off. So I'm just going to turn my microphone down, and I'm going to let you two talk for a few minutes. And I'm just going to sit over here and listen. And since I don't know what y'all going to ask me, I'm going to work on my material.
That's scary.
Because it's hot seat for me, and then it's hot seat for you.
Yeah.
You just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. We don't do hot seat around here. I might lie just a little, but anyway.
Just a little.
We'll start right here with Brother Jamie. Brother Jamie, tell these folks something about you.
Started coming to church here about a year ago. Love it. Probably grown 3 or 4 times in the last year from where I was a year ago. Started helping with a men's group on Thursday night. That's pretty fun. On Wednesday night, I have the junior high school kids. That's different. I never thought I would be what you would call a teacher. Just ready to do anything that the Lord says do.
How long have you, which now we all know, everybody that probably, all of our church folk know about how long you've been here, but when exactly what year did you get saved? I've heard you tell it before, but I can't remember exactly what year it was.
April the 12th, 2012.
So you and I are pretty close on our spiritual birthdays. Mine does happen 9 years before
17th.
yours. Because mine was 17th of April.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that spring, I like it. I like the month of April. I got 2 kids' birthdays in the month of April. Grandkid birthday in the month of April.
Well, I tell you, right after I got saved, of course, it was Easter weekend, and I went to church that next Sunday, and they were talking about the rock that was rolled away. And I hate to say it, but I had no idea about any rock that anyone was talking about. I had to tap Brother Gerald Edmonds on the shoulder, and I'm like, what rock are they talking about? I've got to know more. And 11 years later, I still feel like I know absolutely nothing, just more to learn.
I hear that. And I think that's a key. You know, on Thursday nights I say that a lot. But I think that's key for everybody who aspires to be. Well, the Bible said if you aspire to the office of a bishop, you know, you desire a good thing. And if you're looking for that, if you want to be a leader, I have found that sometimes the best way to be a leader is first to learn to follow.
Right.
You got to be a good follower before you can be a good leader. But being able to kind of discover who you are, discover where you need to grow, where you need to learn, you know, you're in a good place for it. Doing it with the young folks is a good place to start. You know, and you got the good fortune of having a couple of helpers.
Oh, yeah. They're great.
And you got a lot of experience alongside of you because, you know, those two, Andrew and Natalie both are. Natalie's been doing this a long time.
Right.
A lot of people don't know it about her. You know, I've been grooming her to teach, you know, girls and kids since she was a kid.
Yeah, they kind of laughed at me our first meeting, and I was like, just so you know, this is the first youth group I've ever sit in. So they looked at me like a cow looking at a new gate.
Yeah. So I know you've been coming here for a year. When you got saved, you were at Grace Baptist Church in Scottsboro.
Yes, under Brother Jody Bell.
Yeah, and
Mighty man.
all of your time in the ministry basically was under him.
Yes.
Until you came here. So every time that in my experience, every time that I have had to move from one place to another, there's been a season of transition.
Mm-hmm.
And it has ups and downs. There's a newness to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like changing houses.
Right.
And you know, you leave a place that you've been for 15 or 20 years and move to a new place. You know, it takes a lot of getting used to. But I didn't feel like there was a huge transition for you when you came here, as far as, you know, just you having to get used to things, and you know, it just seemed like it wasn't. It didn't feel like it was a big deal to you. I don't know how else to say that. It didn't feel like it was. You weren't very nervous. You didn't. You just kind of blended in and
Right.
started making friends. You know, there wasn't a stage of standoff and.
Well, as far as nervous, Grace was the only place I'd ever really been. It's the only place I called home. When the Lord said go, and I followed his lead, you know, when he said, you know, I was mowing my grass, and we're not going to get into who, what, when, where, why's, but I was mowing my grass and asked the Lord, put me somewhere. I need to go to church. My wife was saying she wanted to go to church. I I come in from mowing grass on a Sunday morning, open my Facebook, and the first thing pops up was Mud Creek Baptist Church. So I came. She loved it. I feel like a chameleon. I could go to church anywhere. Mm-hmm. But when she said, let's go back to Mud Creek, cool. 3 weeks later, she's like, I think this is it.
Didn't need to go anywhere else?
No, sir.
And I think sometimes that happens. You know, a lot of, I know for when the very first time that I was like trying places out was in between my time at New Beginning and Pathway. There was a stretch of the period of time that was, I think it lasted about 3 or 4 months, where I was going somewhere. We tried somewhere different. I mean, we went all the way up and down the highway. We went down to Bluntsville. You know, Mark Moon was pastoring there at the time. We visited him even, but there was a lot of things. You know, I discovered a lot of things about myself, and I had been visiting on my own on nights outside of our church nights at other churches, other denominations, and you know, I wanted to know what was out there, what if anything that I felt like I needed or was lacking or missing. I wanted to know what it was. I wanted it. You know, if I was missing anything, I wanted it. And I mean, I got to be honest. I learned a lot of things from my other brothers in Christ. You know, even from other denominations. I learned a lot of stuff from them. I carried a lot of things with me, right. But there was nothing missing from my life that I needed in order to carry on and be who God wanted me to be. And once that was very powerful for me, and that's when I became, you know, like you. As long as somebody believes in the death, burial, and resurrection, there's enough common ground right there for me to be able to worship. I may not exactly do, you know, practice the things they do, but I can get along, right, you know, with just about anybody. I mean, I can chew. I've arrived at a place spiritually where I can chew up the meat, spit out the bones. I don't have to have, you know, somebody does not have to see things exactly the same way I see them for us to be able to worship the Lord together. So I understand what you mean by being a chameleon. As long as you don't start singing Boy George, we'll be in good shape.
Hey, I don't even know Boy George, so I'm thinking we're pretty good.
Well, I'll sing it. No, I'm just kidding. I ain't going to. So we'll skip over to Brother Chris. Everybody at Mud Creek knows Brother Chris. He's been here since almost the very beginning, and he's been here since we started having services. He actually been here since we started working. He just took him a little while to recognize that he wanted to be a member, but you know, but man, you go back a little farther in the church, man. Me and Jamie goes back a long ways to almost elementary school. We actually go back to elementary school years.
I was 5 when I lived at Valley View.
Yeah, and I was 9 or 10. You know, we were very young. Some people don't know that me and Jamie's brother Jonathan graduated school the same year, and we knew each other all of our lives almost. And I guess we were in the 5th grade when he and I first met. That's when all the different schools kind of converged in one place.
Yes.
And now in Scottsbury anyway, they all go to the same school, which I thought was a great idea. But anyway, but Brother Chris and I, now you and I go back a long way too, but we weren't very close. You know, really, I didn't get to know you until the latter part of 2017.
Right.
Probably the fall.
It's probably later than that. Probably the beginning of 2018.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
I actually spent the last part of 2017 in jail.
Mm-hmm. I remember now when you came over to work on the Explorer that day, I was having some issues. I always tell that funny story. The very first interaction that Chris and I had, he was. I mean, there was fire, shooting out my motor. He's down there fooling with it with one hand, eating a bologna sandwich with the other. Working, and I never seen anything like it. I thought he's going to get gas on that bologna sandwich and burn it. Stuff was splattering, and he's just still eating. I don't think anything could have curbed his hunger.
Oh no!
That dude was tearing that bologna sandwich up, boy. I was a little bit jealous, but I can't. I don't like bologna, so I still ain't much on it.
Hey, I love me some poor boy steak.
Hey, poor boy steak. You guys, how did I know? How did I know something like that was going to be said? I need to adjust that just a little bit. So I know I was there when it happened for you, so I know what happened. But I'm gonna let you tell it.
Well, like I said, I spent the last part of 2017 locked up. February 7th, 2018, gave my life to the Lord, and we went to church where you was pastoring at the time, and my whole life changed during that time, and then we started this down here, and I came down here and helped you work on it. And I didn't really have a transition because I helped make this place what it is, so it was just like being at home, and it's what this is home.
Yeah, the transition for us was that none of us knew initially where we were headed. This wasn't a thing when I resigned, and I had no. I had a plan, but it wasn't this. And that's just how God does things. He specializes in taking our plans and, punting them, onto the other side of the field, and then force us to play with the ball that He gives us. And therein lies the great detail of this whole thing is.
Talk a little louder, Chris.
Yeah, talk a little louder. That means get up in the microphone, Hoss.
Hoss.
Hey, there you go.
Maybe that's a little better.
Yeah, a little bit. Jamie, reach over there and pull the end of that towards you just a hair. There you go. There you go. That's it right there. That puts him in. Yes, sir.
Sound off.
That sounds good right there. So, Chris is telling you the truth, guys. There really was no transition for him because he helped. Me and you and Brother Lance, right? We were up here. And then you had to take a hiatus for about a month and a half because you were able to buy a house, and you were getting that all done and getting it set up, and getting everything hooked up and ground, landscaping, all that stuff done, and then you came back and helped us finish up. But I'll never forget we were in there on that very first sanctuary. You had my, no, you had yours. It was a framing nailer, and I was like, we're not going to start having services until we get this thing done. I ain't going to have a halfway put together sanctuary. People come in, visit, it's not happening, and we liked a little bit actually having it completely completed, but Chris looks at me and he's got that framing nailer and he's saying, Jamie, and he's pointed at me and he said, now tell me what else we got to finish before we can have a meeting.
Right.
Tell what else needs to be done so we can have a meeting.
I was ready.
I got the nail gun. Show me the way.
I was a little bit terrified. I thought, well, I was afraid to say this, and this. I was just like, let's just, this couple, he was tired. We were all tired. We really needed a break. I couldn't take one. But here, I let everybody else have one. I decided to let everybody else go home. But, man, that was a lot of fun. So, I see you over there looking at your list of questions. Either that or you're answering messages, one of the two.
I'm just reading the comments.
Okay. Well, is there any comments coming in that's...
No, Patrick said he liked bologna too.
Oh, so it's Dwayne Griffith's birthday today. Happy birthday, buddy. God bless you. Y'all can sing now. I don't think you want us to do that.
No.
I actually don't. My dad said it's still not very loud. So I'm going to turn it up just a little bit more, but that's about maxed out right there, Dad. So you're going to need to turn up your listening device. Either that'll put you some hearing aids in or some headphones or something, because it'll start distorting if I get it any louder. So if you guys got something, I mean, that's people tuned in tonight to see y'all put the stumps on me. So try not to get too deep theologically or personal or whatever you want to do. I have told you, there ain't nothing off limits. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about. I'll do my best to answer it swiftly and honestly. If I answer it swiftly, you're going to get whatever's on my mind, so be careful.
I'll go first.
All right.
Has there ever been a sermon you wish you could have done differently?
Absolutely. Many sermons. Almost every one I preach. I wish I could do them. When it's over with, I analyze it. I think about all the stuff that I didn't say. I think about illustrations that I could have used in different places. But if I had to pick one sermon out of all of them that I wish I could have done differently, it would have been the first one. I mean, I still remember how that went down, and those people were so gracious to tolerate me.
Right.
You know, I go back to that a lot of times. I think about that really, really out. Boy, God bless their hearts, because it was a train wreck. It was part nerves. To say that I hadn't studied or prepared would not be true, because I had studied the hide off my fingers trying to get ready. But those were prior to the days of me understanding how to study and how to put thoughts together. And
your daughter.
Oh gosh. I love my children.
Right on.
They're the absolute nicest people on the planet. 2 hour answers. But yes, if I could go back and redo one, it would be that one. But I wished I would do them all differently when they're over. Right. I don't think I've ever walked away from a message, and
you were 100%.
Yeah, and I was 100% satisfied with my part in it. But now, the Lord, in spite of me, has honored and has honored His word and got in the middle of those things and done some great things in spite of me.
Right.
In spite of me.
As for myself, I would say over at New Albany, Mississippi, at the Lighthouse, I've done a little breakfast devotion. Nothing that I had prepared is what come out of my mouth. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, that's happened to me a few times. And there is one other time that I wished I hadn't ate Taco Bell before I went to preach.
I've heard about this. Go ahead, preach.
You know, I mean, it's happened. I'm sure it's happened to all of them. But there was one time where I wished I would have ate something different before I went to preach. That's when I stopped eating before I had to preach. Yeah, if y'all see me now, if y'all see me nibbling on Wednesday night or anything, if I got to speak, it's a little bit, just a little bit, because I learned my lesson that night out there on the mountain. I won't never forget it. It was so embarrassing, and I won't never do that again. It's so embarrassing, I don't even want to tell people what happened. I mean, we can tell it privately, but I ain't telling it out loud. Natalie, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That wasn't a sermon, Natalie. I was playing music when that happened. But anyway.
Since you go back to your first sermon, so when and how did you know God was calling you to preach?
I knew it in 2004. The Lord had already been dealing with me a little bit about it. And I started getting, believe it or not, I was not somebody who could talk in front of people. That just wasn't me.
That's hard to believe.
I know that now. But, back then, I could always talk to people. My family will tell you, my grandmother, she's online tonight. If she's still here, she'll say it. My grandmother will tell you that I've always had the gift of gab. I've always been able to relate to people. I pick up on things that people say, and I can just about carry on a conversation with anybody. If I can get you talking just a little bit and figure out what you like to do,
right.
I can find some common ground with you. My problem is I don't know a whole lot about anything, but I know a little bit about everything. But I know just enough to be able to communicate with you. And I'll be honest with you, that's just a gift of the Lord. The Lord gave me that, and I use that not as a manipulation tool, but I use that as a ministry tool. Because, and we said this a while ago, if you can't form some kind of dialogue, some kind of communication, if you can't open a line of communication with people, that you're done, you're off, and they're not going to. They're not ever going to have anything to do with you. After that, they don't want to hear it. The old saying is nobody wants to know how much you care nobody cares how much you know till they know how much you care. And if you can't identify, if you're not willing to listen to somebody and pick up on what they're saying to you, then you'll never prosper. And that happened to me when the Lord verified that He was calling me to preach. I was in a conversation with a lady who attended our church, and she just stopped and she reached out and put her hand on my shoulder, and she said, "Brother, have you ever considered that the Lord, might be wanting you to preach?" And I was like, and I lied. I said, "Nope,
right,
absolutely not. Not me. Not this guy." We went on a little bit. We'd started a singing group. I had a bluegrass gospel band, and the very first singing that we went to, we were down in. Yeah, we were down in Center, I believe it was. No, we were at Geraldine, and Brother Stanley Rooks got us at our very first appointment. His son played banjo for us, and Stanley called, and he worked it out where we could go. We went to this church, and we were in the back kind of praying before we got started, and the guy said, "Well, somebody's got to be our speaker," and Kevin Gilbert said, "I nominate James." Tim Clevenger said, "I second." Judd Rook said, "I third." And they looked at me and they said, "It's 3-1." And they walked out of there, and I'm arguing with them like, no, I'm not the talker. I'm not a talker. And they just didn't pay me no mind. We walked out on the stage, and I had to do the talking, and man, I was scared to death. But that really began, the Lord used that to help me get comfortable speaking to groups of people.
right.
But the first time that I ever spoke in church, addressed a crowd, other than singing, was during homecoming in 2004. They asked me to read the church history. I shook so bad. I was so nervous just reading the church, and I couldn't even pronounce people's names correctly. People I knew my whole life.
Right.
I couldn't pronounce their names correctly. And I knew then that's what God wanted me to do, because I just couldn't. I was so terrified, and I still to this day, I'm terrified of making a mistake when I get up there. But you guys see me sometimes now, I just jump up and run up there. It's not like an itch that I have to scratch. It's just that And it's just from the Lord. I know what needs to be said. The Lord's already told me, what's got to be done, and there ain't no use me, putting it off. But that's a lesson that goes all the way back to the day that I knew, January the 31st, 2005. I preached the very first sermon that I ever preached. I announced my call to preach exactly 5 weeks prior to that. It was between Christmas and New Year's. It was at our church business meeting, or our church council meeting, excuse me. I served on the council at that time. I was responsible for the church grounds, mowing and picking up trash and carrying the garbage out, stuff like that. I was just, I volunteered to do that for a year to try to get out of preaching. Started the bluegrass group to try to get out of preaching. Everything I did, I was trying to get out of preaching. It just is what it is.
Right.
And when I knew I couldn't not do it anymore, that was the last straw for me. There just wasn't no way to not do it. I had every excuse in the book. I went and sat down with Brother Mike, and I said, man, I can't preach. And he asked me, why not? I said, well, I laid down all the rules and the regulations that I'd been taught my whole life. He said, where did you get those? I mean, who told you that? And I told him, and I was told that by men that I still respect and have a tremendous amount of love for today. Right. I don't have anything negative to say about them. I just found out that their interpretation of Scripture, after I sat down and studied out original language and put things in context, in proper context, I just found that we were different on some things. We're square on more things than we disagree on, but there's some things that we disagree about. But through that, I realized then that my calling was not something a man could do. Probably would announce my call to preach a long, long time before that, if I had felt like, if I had even had an inkling that it would have been okay for me to do it.
Right.
I'd been led to believe I'd be out of the will of God, and basically living in sin. If I did that, I've been told that a few times since. To be honest with you, don't really care what people think anymore. Just I got to do me. I let them be who they got to be, and we move on down the road. Sorry for the 2-hour answer. Natalie warned you.
Hey, she done got on you again. About Josh, right? That's the principal out there at Skyline.
Who's that?
Joshua, right?
Oh, yeah. There's Randy Watson, Dale Baker. There's my granny. Miss Robin. Natalie says, I do wish people knew the version of you at home. It's not as easy on you as you make it seem. I don't know what she means by that. May have to bring her on.
Unfortunately, I think I know what she means by that, so how can you not know what she means by that?
Well, Natalie's not always good at being an expository deliverer.
Maybe she should have been here tonight.
Absolutely not. I ain't no way. She'd run me. She'd run me. She's smarter than I am, and that's I can't have people thinking that. Hey. And I'm gonna tell you, she's been around a lot of preaching in her life. I drug her all over this country. When she learned how to driving me to revival meeting, and that's where she got all her time behind the wheel, just about. And I spent most of those meetings most of those drives terrified of my life. I was prayed up and ready to go when we got there, but I'll tell you this, though, Natalie, there's that old song, that country song that said she thinks we just fishing. Mm-hmm. That's the way I felt about
making memories.
I hated that I had to do what I had to do, but I'll be honest with you, other than my wife, I wouldn't have wanted anybody else in the car with me. I thoroughly enjoyed all those trips, and it did me more good than it did her. She learned how to drive, but there's going to be memories that'll be with me till the grave.
Sitting in class with her on Wednesday nights, all those trips, every one of them sunk in.
Yeah. Yeah, she learned a lot. She learned a lot of things that I probably didn't want her to learn, but she learned a lot. She learned a lot about the church too from those trips. She learned a lot about. I mean, we say we're going to be real around here, so let's just be real. She learned a lot about the church that I wish she had never had to learn.
Yeah. What she know about White Castle?
Did she tell you that? Oh, I'm gonna say it out loud. This video may get banned from Facebook when I do, but I'll say it out loud. So, I've always been up until that year that she's talking about this incident happened. I had always been, I was just barely liking contemporary style music. And I mean, just.
She said, no, Dad.
Just barely. No. Now it's too late now. I'm already involved in this, so.
I'm coming in hot.
Hey, I told you I was going to get to use that. So, we're driving. And I actually let her drive. And Carrie Job was doing a concert in Nashville at Rocket Town, which I found out later on was basically a youth center. They had like a skating rink and stuff in there. And, it was like a skate park, indoor skate park, and they would take in the teenagers and stuff around. Hey, and they would bring them there. They would minister to them, and it was great. I thought it was a great thing, but I had no idea what it was before we walked in the doors. But Natalie had got me listening to this Carrie Job. I'd never listened to her before, but she did. She had this recorded Revelation song, and it was the first version I'd ever heard of it was hers. And then the second version I heard of it was Phillips, Craig, and Dean, and I've always preferred her version of it over everybody's. I just think she does a better version of it. But it was Valentine's Day and coming up, and I'm not a big gift buyer. And that's one thing people probably don't know about me, and I feel terrible about it. But come holidays, anyways, I'm just not a big gift buyer. I never have been, and I can't help it. What do you mean, Dom? Stop right there. Listen, that is a Christian song that coming in hot before anybody gets a bad idea. There ain't a curse word in the whole thing. And that's Lance Wright's fault that I even know that song. Bless God, so y'all can just blame it on him. But I'm like a fajita. Anyway, so we go. I bought tickets, and I bought the VIP. I upgraded to the VIP. I wanted to do. I love to do special things for my wife. So I thought it'd be a good idea to upgrade the tickets. And we went early, and we got down on the floor. We got like just a few feet from the stage, and it was a Q&A. And Carrie Job comes out and talks to the crowd, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I felt like a creep in there because I'm the only guy in the place over 20 years old, and most of them are teenagers, and most of those are girls, and I'm towering over everybody, over all the kids that are in there. So I was hunting a place to hide, and I'm out of my comfort zone. I'm a bluegrass man. It's not my kind of music, but it was for Natalie, and I kept saying, I'm going to go. And anyway, I had a great time. The Lord really blessed. And I'll be honest with you, I came out of that show very impressed with Carrie Job. And I've been a fan of hers ever since. And I listen to anything. And I'm a fan of hers because of how she conducted herself, of how they handled that concert. I mean, it was more like a worship service than a concert, really. I can do without all the electricity and all of the two sets of drums, and that was rough on an old man's ears. But she came out. She talked to those kids about modesty. she talked to those kids about integrity and character, and she talked to them about, not doing things to offend people of different faith groups. It's just a lot of stuff. She really earned my respect. But to go back to what Natalie was saying, it was we're driving. It's snowing when we leave here, and I make her drive. She's never driven in the snow. We're going up 24 towards Nashville, crossing Mont Eagle, snowing. I'm making her do the speed limit, 18-wheelers. You know how it is going through there.
Right.
And I'm on her. I'm like, you stay the speed limit. You can be within 3 mile an hour above or below. I'm good. But you stay the speed limit. And I was always been of the mind that if you're going to make mistakes with me right beside you, so I can help you correct them. I can walk you through and learn you. And she knows that now. But we finally get across to the other side. Sky breaks, sun comes out. I mean, it's beautiful on the other side of Mont Eagle. No weather at all. We drive on up. We get off at Franklin, and at the exit for Franklin, and we were hungry. I thought, let's just stop and get something to eat. We didn't have Chick-fil-A here, so we whooped in Chick-fil-A, went in, sat down, ate. We come back out. She was like, listen, Dad, I don't want to drive. I'm scared of Nashville. My nerves already shot. You made me drive up through here this far, so we're coming out. We're pulling, getting back out to go towards the interstate, and I look over to the right, and there's a White Castle restaurant over there. Now, I had been around. Dad was a truck driver, and I'd been around, so I knew that White Castle restaurant was the Yankee version of Crystal.
Right.
So I'm like, I was blown away that there was a White Castle in the South. So I'm over there amazed, and I'm like, Natalie, it's White Castle. And she goes, yeah. I'm offended. I said, Natalie, seriously. I pointed at it, and I said, right there it is. There's the White Castle right there. And she's like, yeah, Dad, I know. And then she's just looking straight ahead. And I'm about ready to pull over. At this point, I'm like, Natalie, do you even know what a White Castle is? She looks at me just as serious as she can. I mean, she's just a teenager at this time, And she said, what, a gay bar? I thought I was going to die. I thought I was going to die. I laughed for a good 4 mile up the road. And she hates when I tell that story. She's going to kill me. She's over there punching herself in the face right now. But I mean, those are memories, She thinks that I'm poking fun at her, but really I'm not. She didn't know what it was. And it's because I had poked so much fun at her, her whole life. She thought I was trying to pull one over on her. And I just thought it was great that I wasn't trying to pull one over on her. But that's a story that I get to carry with me the rest of my life. And that is a memory that brings me so much joy, not only because of what came before, but it's what happened in that moment and then what went on to happen. And then the ride home that night was great. We got to talk about the ministry and worship and music and character and honesty and integrity and those things. There was so many things that came out of just moments like that. You had all aspects of life in those trips. And
got a question.
Go ahead.
Andrew Miller.
Uh-oh.
How do you narrow down what you need to preach on or teach on when you have many different things you seek and have been laid on your heart?
It's like carrying on a conversation with somebody. In my head, I'm now I'm just going to be honest with you. We've had enough sermons preached to save the whole world. Mm-hmm. We don't need any more sermons. What we need is a message. We need the message.
Right.
So in order to get the message that God wants me to preach, I have to be very, very open to everything that's being said. I have to be listening way out ahead of time. I used to think people that could preach sermon series were ridiculous. I thought, man, you planning those things out months in advance, and the Lord ain't going to get nowhere near that. And that's not true. And I'm learning that's not right at all, because I've been doing it on Wednesday nights. And sometimes all the Lord wants me to do is just lay the stuff out there. But sometimes the Lord will get in it, and, man, it turns into an evangelistic message. Mm-hmm. I've had to learn to trust the Lord's wisdom on these things, because when somebody's sitting out there that's needing to hear that, when it's their time, when God's going to call their name, He's going to allow me to do that. He's going to use me to do things His whatever way. And I also watch how the wind blows. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. If I'm out here, if I'm trying to run a race, I'm going to watch to see how the wind's blowing before I start running. If the wind's blowing against me, then I've got to prepare myself to run headlong the whole race. But if the wind's blowing at my back, I know I can lay up for a little bit and save it for the very end. Same way with preaching. I'm paying attention to what's going on. I know people think I can't see people. I really can't. But I feel the energy in the messages, and I just know I can just know when I'm studying. The Lord, it's the same way. I feel certain types of energy when I'm preparing stuff. It's like when you hear something and it just hits different. That's the way it is for me when I'm studying. When I read something or I come across something and it hits different, that's when I know I pay very close attention. Because it's not, sometimes it's just for me, but sometimes it's for everybody else. Right. Sometimes it's just for a certain person. I start looking for opportunities to share what I get immediately. If I can give it to somebody else and not have to share it on Sunday, it's off of me. It's gone. But sometimes I can't give it to anybody else because I got to share it on Sunday or Wednesday or Thursday.
I've seen times when you gave it to several people and still had to preach it on Sunday.
Yes. And I did that because, and this is what I've learned about that, I give it to people on Thursday because they turn around on Friday or Saturday and it's something that comes up where, I just talked about this with the preacher the other day. You was talking about that just a minute ago. I give people stuff. You don't never know when and I've learned that, I've learned, it's been my experience that when I preach something, 9 out of 10 times, people don't remember what I preached about. If I give them something very important, if I get them nuggets, ain't for everybody. Even though I give them to everybody, they ain't for everybody. Only certain people remember certain nuggets. So narrowing it down, that's difficult. I have to stay very broad and then just wait on the Lord to say, okay, hit this, and this, which is why I went back to outline building, pretty early on. And I had some good expository preachers around me that said, this is the best way to get all the information, to really expose the text, peel back all the layers of the onion and get down to the good stuff, and you got to go, there's a process to doing that. Now that doesn't mean that I don't preach topically, because I do. Sometimes I'll preach exegetically and I can't help it. I just have to go exactly which way the Lord says go. I don't mean to use them $10 words on you, Jamie. I'm sorry about that, but
I was just sitting here thinking about the question that Andrew asks, and of course I have a 9th grade education. I ain't smart enough to come up with what the Lord gives me. So whenever He makes it stick, I know that's what He's saying. It's a little easier for me. I don't have to go with, when the Lord says this is it, well, this is it.
Well, You know, y'all asked that one night here in the men's meeting.
Yes, and you sit there and you just like, do. And you looked up there and, yes, it blew my mind.
What word did he use?
Synonyms. Synonyms.
Synonyms. Outlining, expository study and preaching and teaching is the absolute easiest way to crank get the wheels spinning. Because sometimes I start doing it and then I don't end up there. That's not where I start is not where I finish. Sometimes the things that cause the wheels to start spinning are never used on Sunday. They never make it to the message.
Right.
But it's just that's God's way of getting my old dumb mind into the moving mode, and it opens me up. Andrew said that that's something that he's been praying for God to keep guiding and leading. Well, that's exactly how, if you're not moving, how many times that my dad's he's a truck driver, and he taught me when I first started trying to train to get my license, I was with him one night and almost killed us both because I didn't understand that when you were in a curve, the worst thing you can do is mash on the gas. Second worst thing you can do is mash on the brake. The second worst thing you can do is let off the gas. The best thing you can do is keep your foot on the gas. Mm-hmm. If you're not moving, that load, that vehicle is a whole lot easier to drive when you're in motion. And it's the same way with your spirit.
Right.
It's the unction to function. It's easier for him to steer the vehicle if you're moving, if the vehicle's moving, and it's easier for him to steer my brain when it's moving. So I use, word study and stuff to get my brain moving. I used to do just what you described. That's who I was for many, many years. I didn't feel like I could do anything different. I thought I couldn't handle it. I didn't think that I would ever have the ability to outline it or do anything like that because I didn't pay attention in school, and much to the chagrin of my mom, my grandma, I didn't do as well as I could have because I didn't apply myself. I didn't want to apply myself. I wanted to drive a truck. That's all I ever wanted to do. I wanted to go drive a truck, make money, see the country. That's all I ever cared about doing. And, God had other plans. And I get to drive a little bit. I love to play music, but I barely get to do that. Matter of fact, I'd quit that today if I had somebody feeling. I had a conversation with Craig Holcomb this afternoon up here about, him learning to play the bass. Somebody else wants to. I really don't. I really do. I have other stuff that I need to be doing, and I can't do it because I'm bound up something that I love and I'm good at,
right.
But it's not my place. So I'm praying for my replacement.
Preacher stuff.
Yeah, really. I mean, it's just you can't make a difference, to somebody that you can't be in front of. I had a conversation with a guy the other day, about, him wanting to watch it online. I was like, we record it. We'll post it later. Which Sunday, we had some issues with the recorder, and boy, I hate it that thing didn't get posted. Thank God somebody, thought real quick to get that up where we could get Maddie's part on video. But, he said, well, the offering must be down. That's why you would rather people be there, keep your offerings up. Actually, the offering is more when the lesser amount of people are here. It doesn't have anything to do with money. You can't affect anybody that's not there.
Right.
And you can't expect God to do something for you if you're not willing to get in there and challenge yourself. You're going to be on the same, and I discovered that. I mean, you're going to be on the same thing all the time till you're willing to get uncomfortable. You got to become comfortable being uncomfortable. My boss man has this saying that nothing comes to a sleeper but a dream. that's all for years. That's all I did was just dream about, being able to pastor, and I dreamed about being able to affect bigger groups of people. I'm learning now that ain't for everybody. It ain't for everybody. That's for some of us, and other people are going to be right there. That's all they want to do. That's all God's told them to do is be right there where they're at, and they're not never going to go past that. They're not never going to get below that. They're going to be solid, and that's where they're going to be the rest of their life. I wish I could do that. I could do a lot of other stuff. I could go fishing.
Man, that drive you crazy.
I love to fish. If I were a fisherman, I'm just telling you, the Lord won't let me. Well, the Lord and my wife. I can't buy me a boat, and I can't buy a truck to pull it.
But you can buy a fluffy poodle dog.
But I can afford a fluffy poodle dog and a new car.
I'm trying to get beat up.
Nah, she knows I love her. I don't see no more questions coming in online right fast. So, what you got, Chris, Jamie?
Back to the question that he asked about, how did you know? For myself, and I'm sure if my wife's watching, she's going to tell you a different time, because it could be like 3 days or it could be 3 years for me. But it seemed like about maybe between a year and 3 years after I was saved. I was feeling the calling to preach, and it scared me because, like I said earlier, my education's not very high. I don't know these $10 words that he was spitting out.
I had to learn them.
My vocabulary wasn't big. I could talk in small words, and I couldn't understand nothing. If I was to put together a entertainment center, I'd have to read it 17 times and then go with step one. But the Bible, ever since I was saved, the Bible just seems it's alive. I mean, it talks to me. I mean, I've never read anything that I understand and I comprehend like I do the Bible. And it was over in Matthew. I was telling the Lord, I was like, look, if you want me to preach, I'm done. You've got to show me. You've got to tell me. You've got to. And my first sermon come out of Matthew, chapter 8, verses, or may have been chapter 6, verses 1 through 8, where Jesus is at the top of the mountain and comes down and heals the leopard. I told my wife, and she's like, huh? Well, yeah, I've been called to preach. And the next thing I had to do is tell Brother Jody. And Brother Jody's like, it's about time you answered your calling, son. Well, I didn't know I had one. Everybody else did, though.
So, this is another question for both of y'all, I guess. What's your biggest, let me go back to it. What's your greatest accomplishment in the ministry?
I would have to say when someone gives their life to the Lord. I can't say that for myself there's any greater thing than watching a child, a grown-up. But I've never put together a church. This is coming from a simple mind. Go ahead, preach.
The only real accomplishment I ever had was say, yes, I'll do it. That's the only thing that I ever accomplished. Everything else that's happened has just been, His grace, His blessings. The most important thing, and I just echo what Jamie just said, the whole reason that I said yes was because I wanted to see people come to Christ. That's it. That's the only reason I said yes. There was absolutely no desire for big buildings and big crowds, and I had no desire. I still don't want to be. This is as popular as I want to be right here. I don't want a lot, because here's what happens with popularity. A lot of people don't realize this. They aspire to popularity. They aspire to have a lot of people knowing who they are. They want everybody to know their name, and they want everybody to look up to them, and they want everybody to listen to their stuff. I don't. And I'm going to tell you why I don't. It's because I don't, when they start digging into my past, it's very embarrassing, the things that they're going to find. I'm very embarrassed by that. And I know who I am, and I know whose I am. But I feel like my past, people tend to use your past and act like it's your present, or even worse than that, to try to act like it's your future.
Right.
And that's just, I've had to fight those fights before, and it's just not a fight I'm interested in fighting anymore. I don't want to fight that fight. But I can tell you this, the moment I start trying to take credit, man, it's coming down.
Right.
The whole thing's coming down.
It's all the Lord. But I am glad that he did choose me to.
Oh, there's no, I feel like this is a more important office. Well, I feel like what I'm doing in here, this is a more important office than the President of the United States.
You're right.
You're right.
I mean, I'm responsible, and I could care less. It doesn't matter to me who's president, Donald Trump, George Bush, Joe Biden. I don't care about any of that. You roll through Mud Creek, you're not going to get, I'm going to preach the same gospel to you and your Secret Service people that I preach to anybody else that walks through this door. That's my calling, and that's what the Lord has placed on me to do. That's a higher calling than to be President of the United States. Many people may not agree with that, and that's okay, but I certainly do. I got a special guest, y'all, guys. All right, y'all ready?
Hello.
The pastor's baby child on the hot seat.
Oh my God.
So I know you've been sitting out here listening to us. As my child, you made mention that you wish that people could see how, about me at home. I don't really know what you're talking about. Jamie said he does, but I don't really know what you're talking about. I would like for you to answer that.
Just from the family point of view, you take a lot of, like what you said about what you don't say, what you did and didn't say. And I mean, we have conversations about it. Growing up, we always did about, I wish I hadn't done this, or I felt like I was a stumbling block, or I said something I wasn't supposed to, or I didn't say something I was supposed to. I think it taught me a lot as far as taking that stuff and realizing it does mean a lot. Like, you can't just go into a service and it's just like, oh, whatever. It really means you could be changing someone's life forever by just following God and letting them to Him.
Yeah.
And people don't usually see that. They think that you prepared all week, like you didn't have another job that you were doing, and then also you're being a husband and a father. Sorry, there's fireworks in my neighborhood. But you were doing so much stuff other than your job as a pastor, and people didn't really see that. I know a lot of times you were judged for not going to hospitals, but people didn't know that you were laying up in the hospital yourself, and you took a lot of that weight on there, even though there was no possible way you could have ever been there for every single person. You always try to be.
Now, I say sometimes things that I probably shouldn't say, but
yeah,
a lot of people don't know this about, I guess a pastor's children are even more judged than the pastor many times.
Oh, yeah.
You know, thank God I had a few friends, you know, that were friends of the ministry, friends of the preacher, friends of the preacher's kids that helped me look out for my children, because Natalie in particular suffered not just once but twice.
Right.
I know people may not see that, but you know, the last experience that she had, just from saying, and I always told Natalie, and she's sitting here live, she verified this. I always told her, if you say it, I might as well say it.
Right.
Be careful what you say and who you say it to, because if it comes out of your mouth, it came out of mine. Whether I said it or not, I said it. And
That's how I learned to shut up.
you know, I pushed Natalie to do things that Natalie didn't want to do. Not because I felt good about it. It's just because I needed somebody to help me. I pushed her to sing. And when I pushed her to sing, I pushed myself to play. I don't think, you know, and I think Natalie now, she may or she may not agree with me, but I don't think I ever asked her to do anything that I hadn't done or wasn't willing to do myself. You know, I had to do things differently with her. You know, my older kids, before they were out before I started pastoring, but Natalie had to sit there and live in it, and it was rough. It was a few years of living in a glass house, so how I had to parent was different. I had to think about what I said at church, and then had to, and then I had to explain myself when I got home. I had to get on to her about things, and then I cool off and then go talk to her about it, about why I did what I did. I overreacted more times than I should have, but I had to go. You know, people don't see that, me having to get on my face and say, hey, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done it. I should have calmed down before I came and talked to you. There ain't no reason for me to act that way. I mean, when I tell people that sometimes you just got to embrace the suck. Sometimes you just got to embrace the suck.
Right.
You got to own what you do, and you can't undo it. You own it, and you try your best not to never do it again, and you got to press on. You can't sit around and dwell on things all the time. You know, I taught that to Natalie. Unfortunately, she had to learn that. I see Miss Amber Haggard giving you some props there, Brother Jamie.
Thank you, Amber.
Hey, Natalie?
Yeah.
A lot of people out there don't know, even though a lot of folks, everybody that goes to church here does, but, you know, I prophesied that Austin was going to be my son-in-law when he was just a little tyke.
Yeah.
And then,
like your truck.
Oh. Oh.
I love you, Dad. I do.
Oh.
Coming in hot.
Oh, goodness. Oh, listen. I put so much pressure on them, you know, when they first got together. Immediately I wanted them to start doing things, and then you know, I realized too that I put pressure on people who sometimes aren't ready for it. Did I ever do that to you, Natalie, when you weren't? Did I put pressure on you to do things that you weren't ready to do?
I think at the time I thought I wasn't ready for him, but I think you knew that I was ready for him. You didn't even let me date Austin for like 6 months after you said for 10 years that I was supposed to date him.
I know.
I was like, what the heck?
Yeah. Well, and that's, you know, that's something else. You know, I always told Natalie, and I've said this a lot. It goes back to how I know what God's doing. I used the same thinking with her in Austin. I always told her, if you'll just trust me, you know, nobody loves you, cares more about your future other than God, other than the Lord himself. Nobody on earth wants you to succeed more than me.
I feel that.
Nobody wants you to be happier more than me. But I need for it to be right. And I told Austin the same thing. You know, when he came and asked me if he could date her, I said no. I said, but now I say no, but I want you to understand why I'm telling you no. I'm not telling you no forever. I'm just telling you not yet. She's not ready yet. But when she's ready, I won't stand in the way. A few months later, I guess it's 4 or 5 months down the road, you know, I pulled up one day and he was at the house. I walk in, they're sitting in the living room, my wife, they're laughing. You know, I just went in.
I'm pretty sure I just told you that we were dating.
Yeah, I went in and took a seat. And I just knew. I knew it was time. When I went in the house, I knew. And I was good with it, you know. But I knew also that, you know, it may not seem like it was, but even sometimes that's the importance of listening to God, because that's the difference that 4 months made. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's how quickly somebody can change. The way they view life, the way they view their current situation. I wanted it to work out, and at the time, Natalie was going through something that she didn't really fully understand, and I knew when she worked her way through that it was going to be like me being called to preach. There wasn't going to be any way to stop it.
Right.
You know, not that I couldn't have stopped it, but it would have just not been beneficial to get in the way of it when the timing was right. And I just had to trust the Lord at that moment that he would make it very plain to them both that the time was right. And I would have peace about it if the time was right. And I had peace, and I had plenty of peace about it. It wasn't me waving a white flag and giving up. It was just, I had peace. I knew it was right. And it was easy for me to just keep my mouth shut and keep moving, because at that point, I felt like he was going to be, well, I knew a long time ago. I've told you guys. I knew a long time ago Austin was going to follow me. You know, he was going to be the one guy that the Lord was going to use somewhere down the line. Didn't know where it was. He wasn't just going to be with my daughter. He was going to follow me. And when it comes my time to kick out and move on up to glory, somebody had to be ready that saw things and that understood things, that had a similar life view, a similar way of doing things. And Austin's always been that kid. People don't know that, but I've been close to the kid all of his life. I let Austin hear his first Christian rap song. He heard it in the seat of my truck. You know, and I'll never forget
thank you for it.
Yeah, I know and I still remember what the kid said to me that night. He said, "Some people will do anything to make their music sound like the world." And I
got a point. He's got a point.
I never forgot it. I was listening to KJ5 too.
It's my favorite one.
But
that's another thing too. You're talking about being real. Just for people who are listening that have kids that are teenagers, I know it's not super popular thing to teach, but you always taught us from really early teenage years. You know, we were starting to date, and you had 3 girls, and you were working through it however you could. But you always said, you know, what's your goal in this relationship? Is it, you know, is it marriage? And we're like, oh, Dad, you know, we're 14, we're not thinking about marriage. And you're like, well, you're either going to break up or you're going to get married. So are you really going to set yourself up for that kind of heartbreak? And I think it took that conversation is how I looked at all my relationships going forward. And people were like, oh, you and Austin, you know, y'all got married really young. And we did. And that's not how it should be for everyone. But I think a lot of it is because I started my dating relationships looking at who God had for me and not who I envisioned myself with, you know, alone. It was a standard of who was going to lead my household, who was going to be the father of my children, you know, and grow me closer to God in the process. So, I mean, I know it's not super popular to talk about, but I think people need to have those conversations with their kids now, because a lot of it's just mindless dating.
Right. The whole point of dating is, I mean, don't do anything with anybody that you ain't going to do with the rest of their life.
Yeah.
I mean, and so when Dawn and I started dating, we started dating in, probably going to say the date's wrong, but here we go. We're going to say like July the 4th.
Don't kill him, Don.
July the 3rd. And then that year, December, I asked her to marry me, and then that following April, we got married. Life took a whole different turn when I was living for the Lord. Everything I done had a purpose. And she asked me, she's like, you sure you want to get married in 4 months? I said, I didn't ask you to marry me because I wanted to stay engaged to you. I asked you to marry me because I wanted to be married to you. And
absolutely.
She said July the 3rd. I was close. We just had this conversation the other day.
Yeah.
I don't know why I don't listen.
You know, I think some, you know, and I used to, the boys would show up to my house, and I mean, I'd get right in their face. My kids would hate that so bad, but they got used to it. But the funny thing is like, even after they would break up, a lot of those kids, a lot of those boys still talk to me.
They still talk to me too.
And they still have like, a mountain. They'll tell me all the time, you know, you earn my respect by talking just straight plain to me. Evan Ferguson, I call him by name, but I'll never forget him calling me on the phone 3 or 4 years past him being involved in any of our lives. He calls me on the phone one day and he said, Tater, you know, I heard many a dad speech, but yours was the only one I ever believed. You know, when you told me that you were going to, you know, beat the brakes off me if your kids didn't come home the same way they left. And he said, I'll be honest with you, I actually believed it. Yeah, I just didn't cut any corners with them, man. But I'd be just real and honest with them. You know, they'd walk in the door and I'd say, you know, I'd open up a conversation with, I'm James, how you doing? They'd tell me their name and say, you ever had your eyes blacked?
Right.
Has your nose ever bled across your lips?
He really did.
And
I'm not lying.
And I'd just look them in square in the face and just be straight up honest with them. And, you know, it'd take them by surprise, but here's what happened. I'd get real honest answers from them. I could tell the phonies from the real deals. You know, boys are gonna be boys, obviously, right? So you got to constantly keep your eyes on them. I got fooled a few times. There was some of them that was slick, boy. I mean, they're silver-tongued devils. But anyway, a couple of those are in the ministry now. Imagine that. But anyhow.
I remember one guy, the first words he ever said to you, which he didn't know you were standing behind the door, was about 3 or 4 cuss words. And then he looked up and realized it was you and about went dead right there in the front porch.
I've sent some right
Wasn't
home.
my boyfriend, so.
Yeah, I've sent some of them right back home. You know, just go catch your dad before he gets too far away. You ain't coming in here. You know, I honestly, you know, and I guess that goes against modern day thinking, but I honestly felt like it was my duty to protect my kids to the best of my ability. And I wasn't protecting them from, shielding them from the real world or I was shielding them from bad people to the best that I could. But I also felt an obligation with every young man that entered into my house. I felt an obligation to him as well.
Right.
To let him know that there was about the expectations. This is what I expect as a man. You look me in the face and talk to me like I'm a man, you can earn my respect. That was one thing and that's really why I fell in love with Austin. You know, I always loved the kid, but the day that I told him no, and he didn't blow a gasket and get all bent out of shape about it and act like he didn't have no reason, you know, that's the reason that I loved him so much more. I knew that in that moment this is the guy that's going to follow you. And, he took my place in his, second chair in Natalie's life, and I'm third chair, fourth now that Hudson's here. So I'm good. I'm good with that. I keep going down the pole, and I'll keep falling down the totem pole, but there'll never be, until the day that I die, nobody will ever want her to succeed more and be happier more. I rejoice every time I lose a spot.
Right.
Because I understand the value, I understand what it means when somebody else ascends to the spot ahead of me. And I'm okay with that. That's not a, what's the word? It's not it's not an insult to me. I don't view it that way.
It's not a demotion.
Yeah, I'm not being demoted.
Right.
Just because somebody else is being promoted doesn't mean I'm being demoted. It just means that, and it takes, I had to arrive there too. I had to get over myself. I had to get to that place where I'm like, I got to let it happen. It's the natural order of things, and it's just the way God designed it, and it's got to be God's way, and the way I want to do it ain't God's way, and I want to do it God's way. So I had to learn to and God gave me grace, and He's allowed me to be able now to see things and enjoy those relationships that I probably wouldn't have got to have if I'd have continued trying to do things my way.
I think Natalie's right too. I think if we teach our kids to look at dating as, looking at our future is who we're planning on marrying and having children with, spending the rest of our lives with, I think the whole world would be different.
Most of your bad decisions are made with a 5-second decision.
Right.
You're not thinking ahead. There's been a few times in my life, I think, and I've told Natalie this a bunch, been a few times in my life, if I'd have thought 5 minutes past what I did, I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, there's a bunch of that for me.
If I would have thought before I done it. I mean, let's be real.
Accurate.
Hey, Rebecca Gass said that, she says, I chaperoned those two for a while on the back row of church. Isn't that right, Natalie?
We always had to have 3 Bibles between us, not just one.
Yeah. She's not lying. She's not lying.
The Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. You had to have room for all 3 of them.
She's not lying. Rebecca was rough on them, boy. I never minded them sitting in the back with her because she was also a pastor's daughter. She understood, and she always had the preacher's back. The kids thought that she had their back, but really she had my back. People like that will never know how much they mean to me on this side. There's no words that I can say this side of heaven to express to people like Rebecca how much her influence in my child's life, means to me. And I'll tell you something else, guys, how important making the right decision, with Austin was. I allowed that to go on. And then, was it that following year? Yeah, it was 2016, 2015, going into 2016. It was New Year's. We went to the Smokies. And our youth group joined with another youth group and went to a conference up there. We're walking down the strip in Pigeon Forge, and me and my wife gets a text from Natalie that says, I just got saved. And we both immediately began to just, at first I was like, praise the Lord. I thought you were, but praise God that you realize you ain't. I'm tickled. I'm not disappointed. I'm excited for her. I was shocked, because she never got in much trouble. She wasn't. She came to church. She did the things. She said all the right stuff. For her to say that, kind of shocked me. But at the same time, I knew that if she was saying it, that it was real. So I want Natalie, you tell the story how it happened, what went on. I remember Clayton Jennings was preaching, but the dialogue between you and Austin.
What do you mean?
Like, wasn't it him that? I can't remember how it was. You know, once you realized you were lost and needed to be saved, you and Austin had a small short conversation. I don't remember what exactly was said. Austin's with you. I'm sure he remembers.
I don't really. He's in there with the babies, keeping them quiet. I don't remember much of what was said, honestly. I know before I got saved, we were talking about that. We had lots of conversations about, you know, how the devil can make you doubt, you know, your salvation or whatever. And so for a while, that's what I thought it was. I was like, oh, you know, he's just making me doubt it. And then Clayton had got up to preach, and he didn't really, he did preach, but he did a lot of, like, poetic stuff. It's not really, I wouldn't call it rap.
Spoken word.
But he actually, it was like a spoken word. And it was a lot actually about being hurt by the church, you know, and then also about questioning your salvation and stuff. And that's when I really felt like for the first time, I almost audibly heard God talking to me. I was like, you know, that's you. You're not saved. And it's me talking to you this time. And I just remember breaking down crying because I was embarrassed because I'd played a part in church my whole life. So, you know, you got to be the good kid. Both my sisters were crazy, if you know them, but I had to be the good kid. So a lot of people just assumed that I was because of what I'd said as a kid, but I didn't really fully understand what was going on. I just knew that's what I was, quote unquote, supposed to do. But I remember I grabbed Emily's hand instead of Austin's because I was terrified to tell Austin that that he was going to think differently of me, which I know now he wouldn't have. But, and she prayed with me, and I audibly heard God say, "You are my daughter." And I don't think I've ever felt more loved in my life.
Right.
And it was just a magical experience is the only way I have to describe it. And I do remember Austin looking at me, and he was like, "Yeah, I know you weren't."
Right.
He's like, "But you had to figure it out for yourself." But yeah, it was probably the best decision of my life. And even now, I was talking to someone about this past week. Anytime, me and Jamie actually were talking to the kids about this, about that some of them were talking about doubting their salvation, or, you know, and we're like, if you don't have a moment, you don't necessarily have to remember the day or the time. Like, some people do, and that's great. But if you can't remember how you felt in that exact moment, then you didn't get it, you know?
Right.
But for me, anytime I ever doubt it, I can feel that all over again. And it's almost just like a laugh at the devil. Like, nope, sorry, buddy. It happened. You know, you're going to have to get over it, and I'm going to keep using it for my gift for him, not for you.
Right. Well, any questions that you want to ask?
You don't want me to ask my questions.
Oh,
I don't want to ask my questions. I'll be here all night.
Any questions you want to ask Chris or Jamie then?
Oh, no, I have a question. I know you've answered this question for me before, but I would like other people to hear the answer. What is your, opinion on reading other versions of the Bible than the KJV?
That's an easy question. Number one, you got to be careful which ones you read. I'm okay with translations that are taken from the same text as, you know, the original, the authorized version. What I'm skeptical about is transliterations. You know, where people will take the King James and translate that into something because they always leave stuff out that's very important. Some of the other translations leave stuff out, and they claim, well, it's from this text or that text or this scroll or that scroll or yada yada. But I would say this: anybody who uses a modern English version or anything like that in conjunction with, something that's a standard, something that's solid, that absolutely, that we hold to and we know to be right, I'm okay with somebody using something. I use Natalie a lot more than I should, but she's really my default illustration. When she was 8 years old, I gave her a copy of today's New Living Translation. I bought it for her and handed it to her. She read it twice, all the way through, twice, in a matter of months. At that time she was on a reading kick. She loved to read, and I know she read it because she talked to me about what she read. I would quiz her a little bit about this story or that story. She'd read about them. She had a general understanding about them. She would even come back and tell me about the duplicate books in the Old Testament. How they would overlap. First, 2nd Chronicles, 1st, 2nd Kings, 1st, 2nd Samuel would overlap on how they would confuse her. Because she'd be reading this, and then 2 books later she'd reread something. She was like, it sounds a whole lot like what I read over here. In her little 8-year-old mind, she couldn't. It's hard to comprehend all that was going on. So she had read it twice. As time went on, she graduated to a New King James, and then on up to she started using the King James Bible too. And I tell people all the time, it's very important that we get it right. So I don't get offended by people who use other versions of the Bible. It doesn't bother me at all.
Right.
It doesn't bother me at all. What does bother me is when they're not using it as a tool to grow. You know what I mean? One of the guy who discipled me, Tim Clevenger, as a young Christian, he discipled me. He put his arm around me more than one time and just refused to let me go. He used the NIV, and he was one of the most godly influences in my life. Nobody will ever convince me that he wasn't living for God, because he was. I mean, he lived for God, and he lived for God in front of me, and he lived for God with me, and he was a great influence and a great inspiration to me. One of the finest people that I've ever knew on the face of the earth. His wife, same way. One of the greatest teachers, most gifted children's teachers I ever listened to my whole life. I was just blown away by her ability to work with kids. And she also used it. And I'm going to tell you, you wasn't going to get anything by either one of them. They were just as fundamentally grounded as I was. And just because they didn't use the same book as me didn't make them any less fundamentally grounded. That's one of those things that I think the church needs to do. I mean, we need to hold things true. We need to constantly be in pursuit of growth, but we need to quit fighting about it. It's dumb. It's just dumb. We need to quit fighting about it.
Right. Need to tell a small little story. Fella started watching this and kind of reminded me of, do y'all realize just how many people are watching us daily?
Oh, yeah.
I still have people watching me waiting for me to fall. Mm-hmm. I still have people watching me trying to catch me doing something I ought not be doing, to where they could be, you see that, you see that, you see that. Well, I watched a man, I don't remember when he gave his life to the Lord, but I'm sitting here thinking about time. I'm going to say probably 95, 96-ish. And I watched him from 95 to 96-ish up to 2012. And that's Dennis Potter that just started watching. I watched that man turn his life around. Started preaching the word. start being a dad, start being a husband, start being everything to everyone that he should have been being prior to that. And I don't know, Dennis, if I've ever told you this. You've been a cornerstone for me. I've watched you since I was about 14, 15, 16. To now I'm 43.
Is that it?
That's it.
Oh,
I seen his name and I was like, I don't think I've ever told him that.
Jamie, you get to sit and listen to Natalie teach. I don't ever get to hear her teach. How does that go?
She sits and she listens. When she's doing one of her lessons, she knows what she's saying when she's saying it, and she can answer any question that you have about it. If she can't answer the question that you have about it, then she goes to either me or Andrew, and if we can't fix it, we got this guy named Tater inside. She's very easy to speak to from the ages of our fourth grade kids to our seniors that just graduated high school. I think that her, Andrew, and I are a really good team.
I'm all right, I guess.
Huh?
I said I'm all right, I guess.
I'm all right, I guess. I reckon.
Chris over there being quiet. Chris, you got a question you want to ask Natalie?
Not that I can think of.
You got anything you want to ask Natalie?
No. No, she's kind of an open book. Sitting in class with her, if there's any question.
Natalie, how do you do things now? You own a business, you're a mom, you got little kids, you have a home, you have a marriage, you have the church, you teach, you sing. How do you manage your time? How do you work that out? Because you bragged on me for doing it, but you do just as much as I do.
I fail every day. I'm just doing the best I can. A lot of times I feel like moms, we're down on ourselves. We're not doing enough. It's either you're not spending enough time with your kids, or you're not spending enough time in the Word, or you're not spending enough time doing stuff for the church. Or as a business owner, I'm not doing enough with that. You know, I feel like I can't please everyone, and that used to really bother me. But we actually did that well-watered woman study in our women's group, which shout out to Phoebe. She's doing a great job in that. But it really put it into perspective of who I'm doing it for. And it just got to the point where I'm only there to satisfy him, you know, like that song says. Mm-hmm. I know it's not much, but I have nothing else fit for a king. And I even have a shirt that I've showed you before, and it's got different things, like I'm making a coffee or making a baby bottle or singing or painting. It's all worship, as long as you're using it to glorify the kingdom and, I like to say, make heaven crowded. That's really what the goal is. So for a long time I struggled, and once I finally got to the point of, you know, it's all for him. So I pray about it a lot, and whatever I feel like he's wanting me to focus on at that time is what I try to do. I fail at it all the time, but I'm just doing my best.
How often do you know, these guys ask me questions like, how do you know the Lord wants you to talk about this, or how do you know the Lord wants to talk about that? How often do you do things like sing a song or prepare for a class, or reach out to somebody, or what, how often do you know God wants you to do something specifically?
I don't know. We've actually talked about this a lot in class about the gifts, that you're given, or the gift in general that you're given usually when you get saved. I feel like mine was discernment, which you told me that from a young age too as well. But I don't really know how to explain it other than I just have peace about it a lot. So I told the kids I never wanted to do hair. You know this about me. I was a big tomboy growing up. I never did my makeup or my hair or anything like that. But the moment I was driving to college and I was on my way there and I just didn't have peace, and I prayed the typical, Lord, please give me a sign, And I came out of orientation. I couldn't pay attention the whole time. Nothing was clicking. And I was like, I'm not going to make it. I'm just sorry to disappoint you, Dad, but college isn't for me. And I walked outside and I had a ticket on my car. And I was like, well, thank you, Lord. There's my sign. I'm out, I guess I'll go work at a bank or something. And then I was sitting in a chair getting my makeup done by one of my friends. She's really deeply rooted in the Word. And she had actually told me she'd been praying about it. And she just felt like she needed, to talk to me about what my plan was for my life. And so I told her I didn't really know. And we went over things that I liked and enjoyed. And at the time I was kind of into makeup and stuff like that. And she said, have you ever considered doing it for a living? And I was like, Lord, no. And then that brought that conversation up to you. As I told you, I just really wanted to do something where I felt like I was doing mission work. That's what kept coming into my mind, is I was supposed to be a missionary of some sort. I thought I was supposed to travel, maybe the world. And you said, oh, no, you could absolutely do mission work from behind a hairstylist's chair. And at the time, I'd never even got my hair done really like that. So I was like, I don't know how you think gossiping all day in a room is going to be mission work. But it turns out it really is one of my biggest mission fields. But I took that feeling of peace that I got then, and the peace that I got when me and Mom pulled into the cosmetology school for the first time to tour it. It was just overwhelming. And every decision I've made from then has just been about peace. So for instance, singing on Sundays. I know Chris has seen this happen a lot because he likes to sit there and listen to us.
Yeah.
But we'll be practicing a song, and I could love the song, and I could have sung it 100 times. And I just look at him, and I'm like, something's not right. I don't know what it is. And they're like, it sounds good. And I'm like, I know, but something's not right. I don't think so. And I specifically remember one morning we had sat there for an hour and a half in practice, which a lot of people don't see that side of it. And we're all excited. Well, then I just looked at them and I was like, y'all are going to kill me. And they all said, what? And I was like, we're not supposed to sing this song. And y'all like, what? Like, we just got this song down. And I remember I said, for some reason, I feel like we need to sing Oh, How He Loves, which y'all know I love that song anyway. But I just had peace as soon as it came out of my mouth. Like, that's what we were supposed to do. And me and Caleb are sitting up there playing it real quick, like 10 minutes before everybody walks in the door. And I had my eyes closed. The next thing I know, I hear somebody tapping on the drums. And at that time, we didn't have a drummer. And I look up and I just have the biggest smile on my face, and that's Andrew. And he was playing it, and that was like the first time he ever stepped out and started playing with us. And then we're all so pumped because we know, and it sounds good, and we're excited about it. And 5 minutes later, the power shuts off, and we have electric drums. So, there is no music. There is no drum set without it. And we had another song picked out, and I told Dad, I was like, well, I guess, we're not going to have music. And we were all kind of disappointed. And for some reason, the Lord was like, no, you're going to sing that song whether you like it or not, because I was trying to get out of it. And I remember looking at Dad, and I was like, I don't know why. I just feel like we got to sing out how he loves. And I said, well, maybe the Lord will let the power come back on, by the end of it. And Randy Watson got up there and talked that day. And right at the end of his speech, about 2 minutes in, you're about to do invitation, and the power cuts on. And that's when I use that example a lot for the kids. I'm like, what I've learned the most is just follow peace. The devil is not peace. Jesus is peace. Every decision you make, look for that, because he'll give it to you whenever you need it. So whenever I'm thinking about studying or I'm thinking about a song, whatever brings me peace is what I choose.
Right.
Your mom had a question she asked on the chat feed. She says, I have a question. Who is your favorite? She said, who is your favorite?
Jesus.
Good answer.
Hey, Preach, I thought the one who stirred the spoon stirred the pot was supposed to lick the spoon. Just saying.
Oh, man. Well, they say the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world, but that's not always. It's not always true either. Well, Natalie, I thank you for coming on. I appreciate your time. I'll let you get back to your doodlings.
All right.
I love you. I hope you have a good night.
Love you guys.
Love you. Bye.
Bye.
Well, that was Nat. Guys, we've been on the air for 2 hours. Been that fast, hasn't it?
Don't seem like it.
Yeah, it's great. So I got a question for y'all. What do people most misunderstand about you the most?
What age people? Because the age varies.
What do grown-ups misunderstand about you the most?
I think grown-ups remember me, the person I was 12 years ago. And they expect to still see that guy. And that guy's dead and gone.
Yeah.
Kids, they don't know that side of me. And the Lord turns me into a crybaby anytime a child is involved with any question with me. I start crying. As far as children's opinion of me, I would hope to think that they all love me because they don't know me. They know the guy that they see today. You ask my grandkids say I'm the best thing since sliced bread, and that's all that really matters. And I make the best eggs ever.
Amen. I hear you. Chris, what's the best insult you've ever gotten? I mean, somebody's trying to insult you, but you actually take it as a compliment. What's the best insult you ever got?
I don't know. I've had some pretty rough insults.
What's the insult you're the most proud of? I'm going to get it out of you. You might as well answer.
I don't know.
I had someone call me from Jackson County Jail and asked me to put money on their bond or books or whatever. And she was smoking cigarettes and said she didn't have no money to put money on her old man's books. And I was like, are you smoking a cigarette? And she said, yeah. I said, then why don't you spend that money on your old man's books? Well, I got to spend my money on him. I didn't put him in there. I didn't do nothing to get him in there. And she said that I had holier than thou money. That was a pretty good insult.
I don't know. I guess you ain't who you used to be. Or you ain't the same, or you've changed, or...
So you would say that the best insult that you've ever gotten is from somebody who's still living your old life?
Yeah.
What's the best compliment you ever got?
Probably the same compliment.
The same thing. If you could have coffee sit down and drink coffee or a Coke or whatever it is you drink with anybody in the world, any living human being, obviously the default answer is the Lord. But I'm talking about another human being, who would it be?
Dead or alive?
Dead or alive?
Probably my mama or my papa.
What about alive?
I don't know.
Ted Nugent.
I knew he was going to say it. Oh.
Man, that would be so awesome. Can you imagine you sitting around? Man, that man, he's full of life.
Hell, he's full of a lot of things. Life being one of them. He's colorful. He's colorful. What's your biggest pet peeve, Chris?
Probably people misspelling simple words. The difference in want and won't.
That's good.
That or say at work, having somebody that's been there longer than me and having to tell them how to do their job that they've been doing for all week long. Say Thursday morning, I have to tell them how to do their job again.
Attention to detail. The lack of it.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of people. About you, Jamie?
My pet peeve. My pet peeve is going to sound really stupid. If I come home from anywhere and there's no milk and bread in the house, there can be anything else, everything else. But I get plumb mad if there's not a loaf of bread and there's not a gallon of milk. I don't know. I'm not going to eat a milk sandwich. I don't know. It's just, that's about really the only thing that just makes me mad, just right off the bat. No bread, no milk.
What do you think the world's going to look like if the Lord don't come? What do you think the Lord's going to look like in 10 years?
It's going to be rough. I'm looking for the Lord to come back before then, though.
In 10 years, if the Lord doesn't come back, we're going to have kids being called dogs and horses and giraffes.
Already got that.
Yeah.
I mean, we've heard about it. This is really going to happen. You're not going to be able to say, he said go over there, or she said go over there. You're really not going to be able to say that. I wouldn't be surprised if the politics is dumber than they are now.
You got a comment. What about you, Chris? What do you think it's going to look like?
It's going to look like more like Sodom and Gomorrah than ever.
Yes.
I think so, too.
It's already smelling like it.
Yeah. So, if you had to eat one meal for the rest of your life, Chris, one meal, you could only eat one meal, and you had to eat it over and over and over again for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Fried bologna sandwich.
Hey, I think I just seen what Jamie's might be.
That's a midnight snack. That's not a meal.
Oh, okay.
If it was a meal, it would be pinto beans, cornbread, fried taters, and pork chops.
All 3 meals every day for the rest of your life.
I could do it for the rest of my life.
I could handle that too, but I think I would choose breakfast.
Yeah.
I think I would choose breakfast over.
That would
That would be a rough sale now because
Yeah,
I
it would.
love fried taters. But if I had to choose one to eat all day, every day for the rest of my life. It'd be breakfast.
You can have fried potatoes with white gravy over them for breakfast.
Yeah.
It's real good.
Y'all remember the other day me talking about, I think I talked about it last week about, I just asked you guys this question, but I talked about the most influential people in my life. And one of those is Jerry Kirkland. I ran into him Saturday morning. I mean, I went straight fanboy, you know what I mean? I totally forgot I was a grown man and ran right up to him like I was in the 10th grade, you know. And it was absolutely, I'm going to tell you, it was just like going back. It's like being transported back in time, 32 years. And that gnat's about to drive me insane. But who are the three most influential people outside of the Lord? Three human beings, the most influential people in your life.
I'll start. First and foremost, probably my brother, John Terrell. And then probably Jody Bell. And third is a long list that's like tied, so I can't really say third.
Can't really say a third.
For me, I guess the first one would be my mama for the life she's lived in front of me. And probably one of my elementary teachers, Miss Culpepper. She didn't pick favorites. She treated everybody the same, and we learned a lot from her. Not just in school, but as a person. And probably the third one would be you, because I've learned more about this under you than I have anywhere.
Right.
I appreciate that. That's what I desire to do above anything and everything. That was going to be my next thing. My next question is, and this is the what I would tell myself would be to, if I could go back and tell my 18-year-old self one thing, that would be get in that book and stay in it.
That was actually one of the questions I had for you.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that would be not necessarily get saved earlier, but learn the Bible earlier. I would have, if I could go back and tell my 18-year-old self that, I would tell myself, learn the Bible. That thing's about to, I'm telling you, brother, that dude, I don't know if I got him, but he knows I was close. I honestly, I have learned more about, I got in at the end of my brain's capability to process and retain information. Yeah. I was coming to the end of the face right at the end of my brain's ability to do that. Now I have to forget something to learn something new. But people think that you just get called to preach and you just know everything, and that ain't really the way it is. I would go into my study, and of course I was poor, so my study was our bedroom, and had a desk in there with a computer and some notebooks and my Bible, and I would go in there and sit for hours and hours and hours and hours. I'd be up early. I would get up, and I didn't drink coffee back then, but I'd get up, I'd go get a Dr. Pepper and come back and sit down and sit. My wife would wake up, on Saturday mornings, and I'd done be sitting over there at the computer for 4 or 5 hours. I'd come in from work, and I'd spend 5 or 6 hours. That was a pivotal moment in my life and I'll never forget it. I preach a message about letting go of the goat, about the scapegoat. And the moment that I got that message, when I understood that, the Bible opened up, that was the turning point for me. That's the day that I moved from just a shotgun preacher to a expository preacher. That text is what turned the lights on for me. for the first time I saw the whole picture, understood it, received the whole thing, and then I was able to put that in outline form. And I'll never forget it. You know, let go your goat. Another one, the second one that I preached that was like that for me was Balaam. And I'll never forget that. I preached on the radio broadcast, on the Follow the Path broadcast. First time I ever preached it was Stop Beating Your Donkey. You know, and there's just so many things that I learned. It took me 10 years. So if I could go and add that 10 years back to my 18-year-old self, man, you know, I 10 years of doing what I spent. If I could have put 20 years in instead of 10 years, you know, before my brain got bad, there's no telling where I'd be. You know, I know the Lord's plan is far greater than mine, but I just wish I'd have spent more time in the Word. You know, as an 18-year-old, even though I was lost, and you know, if I could go back and I know the things I went through made me who I am, I totally understand that God's grace is sufficient, and I don't question his reasoning or his timing at all. He knew what he's doing. But if I could, you know, there's a lot of things that I did that I didn't go along with. A lot of things I read to retain information that I put in that I don't use anymore. That I didn't use 6 months after learning it. You know, but I knew this was coming, you know, decades before it happened. I can't believe that I didn't take more time, you know, and invest in myself a little bit more in the calling that God had for me. But what about you? What would you have done different?
Everything. Well, no, I can't say that. If I'd have done anything different, things may not have turned out the way they did.
Right.
And what I did, I can use to help other people.
Absolutely.
The one regret that I have is after I joined the service and got out, I had a job at Raytheon. I went for Thursday and Friday, walked through an orientation. And over the weekend, I discovered that Huntsville was too far to drive. At 22-ish, 21-ish. Now I'm 43-ish, and I drive to Huntsville every day for nowhere near the money. Right. So, yeah. That's probably the biggest thing I would have changed, because the life that the Lord allowed me to live and walk through the stuff that I walked through. Now I can talk to the people that I talk to, and he's got a plan, and you sent your gnat over here to me.
Well, thank God.
He's got a plan. His thoughts is better than our thoughts, and his ways are greater than our ways. So he needed me to be where I was when I was there, because he knew what he was going to do.
Right.
So I can't really question his decisions. But as far as my decision, it would be taking that job at Raytheon.
Well, any other questions for me?
No, I think I'm good.
Jamie?
I'm good. Any more questions from anyone out there? Natalie did say our kids' class, we asked them the last couple of weeks, where do they see themselves in 10 years? And Xander and Mary and pretty sure Mercy, they've all got the conclusion that in 10 years that they're going to be the future of the church. They're going to be the ones leading classes, and they're going to be the ones leading choirs, and they're going to be the ones, you know, I asked them, I was like, where do you fit in? At 11, 12, 13-year-old, 14, 15-year-old, where do you fit in?
Shouldn't that be our desire, though?
Yeah.
Really? I mean, that should be. I mean, I say this. I mean, I've said it out loud here tonight. Even. I mean, I say this a lot, and I've told this to anybody who asks. If you want to know If you really want God to work in your life, pray for your replacement.
Right.
Start asking God to replace you. And, you know, and if you're responsible for, you go back into the Old Testament, you look at those prophets, you know, and I use Elijah and Elisha a whole lot. If you're responsible for anointing and teaching and training up your replacement, the person who is going to follow you, you have more responsibility than just to teach them about the job. You have also the responsibility to teach them that when the time comes to how to look for their replacement.
Right.
You know, it's not about if this ends with me, then what good was it? You know, I'm big on this. I mean, you guys hear me all the time. Do it for everybody. Do what's right for everybody to the best of your ability, even if it comes at your expense. If you focus on the things that are, if you focus on the future instead of the present, you'll work for the future and you won't focus on the present. And that future is what makes all the difference, man. I mean, it's literally, I'm with these kids. They're not going to be, and the reality is in 10 years, they're not going to be leading. They're going to be novices. So, and the Bible talks about that. And that's our responsibility also to teach them about it. When they get to that age in life, they're not going to be spiritually ready. No matter how much we want them to, they're not going to be emotionally, mentally, spiritually ready to lead. They may be knowledge-wise.
Right.
They may be ready in one area. So then it becomes our responsibility to let them grow and prop them up while they learn in other areas. Find a spot for them to teach, but stand there and keep them propped up. Teach them how to deal with the issues that come their way, so they get where they can learn and grow. And once they've realized their potential, you know, we back off and we look for somewhere else to serve.
Right.
I mean, that's exactly my plan. You know, I'm not going to leave. I'm just going to take on a new role when the time comes. You know, the reality is here's been the problem, I think, in the church for all these years is, you know, you have this group that thinks that their way is the only way, this group that thinks that their way is the only way, this group that thinks their way is the only way. And generally speaking, those three gaps, those three groups are there at the same time.
Yes.
So, you know, we've still got, I'll just call it like this. You still got the old time religion crowd. And now you've got our age group, which is that crowd that's in the middle. And then now you've got the contemporary crowd coming up. 3 generations under one roof. Mm-hmm. And nobody sees anything the same way. Well, you know how the quickest way to bridge those gaps, and I mean, I wish I'd have said this to Natalie because she actually said this yesterday. The quickest way to bridge those gaps is to do it all. Do a little bit of everything. And then you teach the young kids that it's okay to have these old songs. And you teach the old people it's okay to have the new songs. And you show the middle age, this group in the middle that had their ways of doing that. You know, it's okay to venture into it. You're not hurting. You're not venturing off into sin because you sang a new song. Amazing Grace was a new song one time too. Mm-hmm. You know, and you're not, just because you sang an old song don't make you an old fuddy-duddy. You know what I mean? But to label the old stuff as the songs of Zion and something new is trash. Yeah. When I can go through the Redback hymnal and pick out several songs in there that don't even mention the name of the Lord. But I can also pick out a bunch of these new songs that ain't got no juice on them either. You know, they ain't got no anointing on them. Just because it's old or new doesn't make it of God, but it doesn't make it less of God. You know, and I think that's a big thing we're really having to. Where I think we do a fantastic job here of doing a little bit of everything. Yeah. Much to the chagrin of people that have to play. Some people have to play music that they don't like. Some people have to sing stuff that they don't like. But they sing it, they just suck it up, and they go on and do it for the glory of the Lord. Because at the end of the day, You never know what somebody might be going through. And you sung a song today that they ain't heard in 40 years. You know, that morning y'all got up a cappella and sang Farther Along. You know, I can remember a time when somebody getting up and singing that a cappella would have just killed the church service. Not here, but I mean, I can remember when something like that happening, everybody would just sit there and stare. But when y'all did it, not knowing how it was going to go over, just got up there, felt inspired to sing it, do it a certain way, got up there and just went after it. And guess what? The Holy Spirit sat down in this place, and people started, not only did people start singing along, people started harmonizing along. I mean, it sounded really good. It sounded like what do they call that? Oh, you know what I'm talking about, Chris.
Sacred Heart.
Sacred Harp. It kind of had some tones of that going on in it. People were matching pitch, and people were just hitting the notes that they knew were right. I thought it was beautiful. You know, and little kids were looking around like, what's going on around here? They ain't playing no instruments.
Right.
Everybody's just singing. I mean, what's happening, you know? And it had the same energy as an electrified song that we would have played, you know, a contemporary worship song. Had that same kind of energy, sung completely different, in totally different style. Sing it from the shackles. That's right. Every step of the way, he's with us. Well, guys, anything else?
For the people who's watching, look right here behind me. The people who's not at Mud Creek Baptist Church, I need you to read this. Making much of Jesus. I never really understood that until I got here. What is the word joy? Joy to me means something completely different now. Joy to me a year ago meant I'm happy. Feel good. Joy to me today has a whole different meaning. It's putting Jesus first, others second, and yourself last. So this making much of Jesus that's behind me, I ask you to, tonight before you go to bed, tomorrow when you're listening to it, whenever it may be, go to prayer with Jesus and ask him what you can do to make much of him.
That's good. It's absolutely good. I don't know where you got that stuff from.
The Lord, I ain't smart enough to come up with it by myself.
Chris, you got anything before we go off there?
No, I think I'm good.
Well, I just ditto what Jamie said. You know, it's we're living in a time right now. One of my favorite books in the whole Bible is the book of Haggai. And, you know, in the second chapter there, you know, they've gotten about 70 years, you know, in. And Haggai was responsible for keeping God's people encouraged. But he looked around and people had quit working on the temple. They'd let the enemies of Israel back in. They were doing things that weren't right. You know, he made the statement that, you know, the Lord said, "Why are you dwelling in sealed houses? And my house lieth waste." You know, you've sown to yourselves, and you got a bunch of money. You've thrown your money into pockets with holes, which means that you're losing everything that you think you're saving. You're losing it, and it kind of goes to another place where the Bible said, "What does it the Lord said, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and then lose his soul? And Haggai was dealing with that, you know, and he prophesied to those people. He said, consider your ways. Consider your ways. Until we change our ways, till we decide that that we're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and we really turn our life around and start focusing on the Lord, nothing's going to change. If we really want to affect change, we've got to do it God's way. And the first way to do that is to just be real with people. Tell people the truth. Don't be, they've had enough. They don't need no more preaching about money. They don't need no more preaching about politics. People know the difference between right and wrong. What they need to know is, what does the Bible say?
Right.
What does the Bible say?
Don't matter about your opinion.
They
What's the
do.
Bible
Yeah, they
say?
do not. Nobody cares what I think. They don't need to know what I think about Donald Trump or what I think about Joe Biden. I have my opinions about them both. By the way, neither one of them are good. But, you know, I don't have that stuff is irrelevant. You know, if you preach to just Republicans, then, and if you and now I'm not saying this, y'all don't, gosh, please don't crucify me publicly. But if I was just going to get up and preach about a Democrat or Republican way of doing things and the other one's going to hell, then and if you truly believe that, aren't those the people that you want to keep out of hell?
Yep.
Right.
If you truly love the Lord, desire to do God's will, and desire to be his messenger and his mouthpiece, then we should do whatever we need to do to be able to tell those people the truth, to be able to preach the Bible to them, tell them what the book says, and leave it at that. And I say this sometimes, man, and the gospel does all the work. If you preach the gospel, then the gospel demands a response.
Yep.
Doesn't matter what political party they associate with. Doesn't matter who their favorite football team is. It doesn't matter what community they come out of, or what side, or what the top or the bottom echelon of society, whatever group they come out. The gospel demands a response. You will accept the gospel or reject the gospel when you hear it. Period.
Right.
That's you know. So our job, and I know people mean well, man. I really do. I know they mean well, and I ain't trying to bang on preachers for, you know, over the head too much about it. I know they mean well, telling people, you know, but you know, there comes a line in there somewhere where we got to decide. We can't just focus on these hot button topics and just stick to those and forget about everything else. You know what I mean? Yeah, I get it that this group over here is doing X, Y, Z. But what about this group over here? Just because ABC don't seem to be as bad, ABC's still in the book and it's still wrong.
Right.
You know? Well, maybe not only they're not doing X, Y, Z, they're doing A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V. You know? And both of you is doing W. You know, but we think because things are small that it's not, that it's, you know, well, that's just not how it goes.
Right.
Can't none of us walk perfect. As hard as we try, we can't walk perfect. We do our best. Walk as close to the Lord, as close to his way, and as close to his will as we possibly can. Try to affect as much change as we can affect in the world. But you ain't going to do that by driving people away. If they ain't here, you can't help them.
That's right.
If they ain't listening, you can't help them. And if you really want somebody to hear the gospel, guess what? They got to be listening to hear the gospel.
Yep.
If you run them off before you ever present the gospel, who have you done? You ain't done no service to the Lord. Matter of fact, you know, you've hindered the gospel at that point. So I would, I always, you know, you guys that do, you get up and talk sometimes. You say you ain't been called to preach, but I got my opinion about that too. Anyway, Jamie preaches.
Amen.
Anytime you get up and share anything, and I say this to you all the time, there's a few things that I don't do. I don't pass offering plate, number one. not because I don't believe in tithing, just because I believe people know that they ought to give. And that's a decision that they got to make. God's going to punish them publicly for it. Privately for what they refuse to do in public.
Right.
Number two, I don't take a salary because it's just who I am right now. I don't want it. I don't desire it. It gives people too much leeway over you sometimes. They begin to consider you a servant or a slave other than a servant, and there is a difference. But the third thing that I'm truly against is dragging people. If you can guilt somebody or force somebody to make a profession or a confession, right, somebody else can guilt them or force them or coax them the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Let Jesus do the work. Be there to prop up the Lord or them while the Lord's dealing with them.
Right.
Prop them up. I've said this before. If the Lord tells you, if He puts somebody on your heart, that person needs to be saved. That's wonderful. God has given you insight into something very particular, very special that's happening in their life. But the worst thing you can do is go over and embarrass them.
That's right.
The worst thing. Here's how you should, and I want to say this out loud because, later on in your lives, you're going to deal with this somewhere along the line if the Lord don't come. And this is what I tell people. You go to that person and quietly speak to him. Let them know, the Lord put you on my heart. And, if you'd like to pray, I want to go with you. But if you want to stay right here, I'll pray with you right here. If you're not comfortable with going down, well, let's pray right here. Is going to the altar important? Absolutely. But an altar can be anywhere. I got saved at the house. So I know for a fact that you can make an altar of repentance anywhere. It's not about the place or the piece of furniture. It's about your heart. And, eventually you guys are going to run into that, in your lives. And when you do, it's just something else. A little snippet, out there for you. I'm not against, going to people. I know people think that I'm against, going to people. I'm not against going to people. I believe the Lord gives you something to say to somebody. You ought to go say it, but just use some discernment, some wisdom about how you go about doing His work.
Right.
Because if you offend somebody, they're going to be offended. Not so much at you, they're going to be offended at the Lord. They're going to be offended at the gospel because they're going to view that as God embarrassed them.
Yeah, that's something I don't understand, how I can get mad at someone at church and take it out on God.
Yeah. A lot of people do that.
I mean, for real.
Yeah.
If Chris Tater steps on my toes and hurts my feelings, I don't get mad at Chris or Tater. I get mad at God. That's stupid.
And that's plain, but that's exactly how it goes for most of us.
If someone has hurt your feelings, don't get mad at God. It ain't God's fault that people like me say stuff before they think about it. And most of the time, if you're mad at someone, chances are that it's just miscommunication.
Absolutely.
I mean, you can go and talk through anything. And then there's that other percent that people are just mean. The people that are just mean, distance yourself from them. You ain't got to quit loving them, but you ain't, I don't know.
Back to what you're saying about, trying to drag people to the altar. Revelations 3:20 says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock."
Mm-hmm.
Jesus won't force you into it, and we can't go grab somebody and drag them to the altar and try to force them into it either. You got to come of your own free will.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm going to tell a funny story about my wife right quick. So we all know that she's a corrections officer at Jackson County Jail, and I'm not going to name names, but there was this one man that was having a really hard time. And, I know you're not supposed to grab people and drag them to the altar, but he was using some language that my wife don't like. So she flips on his intercom and puts some Amazing Grace on. He calmed down immediately.
Oh, yeah.
Immediately.
Craig used to do this, something similar to that. Charlie Thompson, when he was here helping me, the very first weekend, he realized Craig came here. He said, if you don't care, tell Craig, on out, go easy with them tapes, when he's hauling people to jail. Them tapes, so I'd just rather him be rough on me. He said, them tapes rough on us now. He said, that ain't what you want to hear when you get locked up. But I thought he was talking about, because Craig likes, he listens to a lot of gospel bluegrass music, and that ain't a lot of people's choice. But it wasn't. Craig was listening to preaching. What he meant was he just didn't like to be preached to on his way to be locked up. Mm-hmm. And I just had a question come in here, and I don't normally do this, but I'm gonna answer it out loud. If he's watching, I'm gonna answer it out loud. And it says, do we support LGBTQ? I do believe in what the Bible says, and I do stand on the word. It's just wondering. And here's the thing. A lot of times when people ask you those kind of questions, they're wanting to. I don't think he's trying to do that. He just wants to know what I think about it. I do not agree or condone anything that the Bible disagrees with or does not condone. If the Bible speaks against it, I speak against it. If the Bible doesn't say anything, I try not to say anything. Because if the Bible don't make it clear, then it's just my opinion, and that's irrelevant. So
the Bible makes it facts. Yeah,
these are the kind of topics that you can't deny. So I would say this: even though I don't agree with it, even though I don't believe in it, even though I don't support it, if somebody who's LGBTQ comes into our church service and they're not trying to cause a scene, if they come in to hear the gospel, I'm going to welcome them just like I'd welcome a drug addict.
Absolutely.
Right. It's not our place to be a judge.
I don't support drug abuse, and I don't support domestic violence. And, but just because somebody's a white, straight male doesn't mean that if they're going to beat on their wife, that don't mean I support that either.
Right.
Because I don't. And I'll preach against that just as quick as I'll preach against anything. It's not about.
I'll go off and say that they got a better chance of not getting talked to. I mean, you come in here beating your wife, you're liable to get beat up before you leave.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is there's so many issues I think out there, and it kind of pains me that people who are struggling with, different sin, different types of things in their life that they can't feel. I want to be careful about what I say, but I'm not trying to be politically correct because I'm just not trying to be offensive. I don't want anybody to hear the gospel and not be uncomfortable.
Right.
If you're not truly born again, following the teachings of Christ, and you hear the gospel, you should not be comfortable.
No.
When you hear the gospel.
Right. No, the gospel's stronger than any sword.
When the gospel's preached, it demands a response. So I don't think anybody that's living contrary to the word of God, but now just because they hear the gospel preached and be made uncomfortable, that doesn't mean that the people should mistreat them,
right,
shun them. Hey, if anybody, the day I got saved, I was no better than anybody else out there that people like to just browbeat.
Right.
I was no better than them, and neither were you.
Right.
Or you. None of us were any good. We were all worthless. But you know what? this is what I've learned in my time in the ministry. We sang an old song, that old song. I'm so glad. A lot of these people that sang, I'm so glad that God saves old sinners, refuse to let some sinners in the church. You know what I mean? They're willing to let some things go and not others. That, and I'll just go out on a limb. LGBTQ people, there ain't no difference in them and somebody who's having sex outside of wedlock, really.
That's absolutely right.
If you're living together and you're not married, you're in the same boat as them. Anything outside of the biblical definition of what the Bible says is okay is wrong.
Right.
Period. And just because you happen to be doing it a little differently doesn't make you better off than anybody else. If you're doing it, and you need to get right with the Lord about it, period.
Right.
I believe if you're seeking the face of the Lord, you're going to have a burden for lost people. It don't matter if they're straight or gay, black or white. It don't matter.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I hope that answered the question here, but and I appreciate you having the courage to ask that question because a lot of people don't.
Right.
That's the only one I got, but my stuff died over here, so I can't see the active live comments, but I hope we've answered everybody's questions that's trying to get one in. Before we go off the air tonight, I just want to say I love everybody. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. This has been a long show. I kind of had a feeling that it might be. Thank y'all for sticking it out with me, fellas. Want to say thank you to all our servicemen and women, all of our civil servants, people that are out here putting themselves in harm's way tonight, trying their best to keep everybody safe. Appreciate all that you do, all you do for us. Everybody that chips in, helps at the church, we appreciate you. We love you guys, all you that support us on our podcast. We love y'all. Appreciate every one of you. Till next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. And may the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. God bless you. We'll see you next time.
Remember, we're not having church tomorrow.
That's right. No church tomorrow.
We will be back Thursday at
6 o'clock.
Men, come on down.
Thank you for meeting us at the creek, and we hope you enjoyed today's podcast. If you have questions or comments you'd like for us to read, send those to mudcreekpastor@gmail.com. Again, that's mudcreekpastor@gmail.com. Thank you for meeting us at the creek, and we'll see you next time.